Okay, so the first thing you're going to need for coconut beef is beef. You don't want to use a good cut of beef for this. You want to use some sort of stewing beef. You can use stew beef. You can use a roast, like a chuck roast or a round roast or something like that. Try to go for something cheaper. I'm using a good middle ground for this dish is a round steak. That's what I've got here. It's a round steak. You're going to cut that up and we're going to marinate it. So cut it as big as you want it. If you want big chunks, cut big chunks. If you want smaller chunks, cut smaller chunks. I like smaller chunks because they're easier to chew and it stretches the dish a little bit. So first thing you got to consider is your beef. What kind of beef are you using? If you're using stewing beef, that's generally already in pieces and you can just leave it that size if you want to and go straight to the marinade. If you're going to use a roast, like a chuck roast or a round roast, you're going to have to cut it up. If you're going to use a round steak, you're going to have to cut it up. And like I said, cut it the size that you want it. Depending on what kind of cut you use and what kind of cut you get, some of it may be fatty. This one really doesn't have a lot of fat on it. But any big solid chunks of fat that you have in your beef, I'm just kind of trimming this off so I can give something to the dogs. But any big solid chunk of fats, any big solid chunks that you have, cut those off and discard them. If you've got any silver skin, which this doesn't have it, any membrane, anything that you don't want to eat, cut it out. Basically, good rule of thumb, if you're cutting something, whether it be meat or vegetables, if you look at it and you don't want to eat it, cut it out, okay? It's just a good rule. But you're going to want to trim the fat while you cut the beef. If it's all going in the same dish, you can cut vegetables and meat on the same cutting board. But if it's not going in the same dish, if you cut meat and then cut vegetables, you stand a chance of contaminating your vegetables, and you don't want to do that. Better safe than sorry. Just get into the habit of doing your meat first and then cleaning your cutting board and your knife before you move on to anything else. Alright, this one's going to be another one where it might be best to do the grocery shopping yourself. This isn't going to be as hard to find, but you want to get fresh ginger. You can use dried ginger, but it doesn't taste as good. And I've never had luck with dried ginger. I always use fresh ginger when I make coconut beef. So, it's going to look kind of like this. It'll be knobby. And just pick out, you don't really need a whole lot. I usually get a big one because I use it a lot, but you can get something about this size and you'll be fine. And I usually just trim these off. I mean, you can peel around them if you want, but I usually just trim them off. Again, if there's a dry spot or it doesn't look good, cut it out. If you don't want to eat it, cut it out. And I'm just going to take all the knobby bits off this. Okay. You can leave the skin on, but you're going to have to grate it really, really fine if you do. But luckily enough, ginger's not hard to peel. Use a spoon. It's easier. And then you just scrape the skin off. It's really pretty easy. And you can scrape the little knobby bits off while you're doing this too if you want to. but just peel the skin off. You can leave it on, but if you're going to leave it on, you're either going to have to fish the ginger out, or you're going to have to grate it really, really small. Taking the skin off, I'm just going to chop this up. I'm not going to grate it. So, but you can see the skin comes off pretty easy. And even the knobby bits come off pretty easy. Okay, and now I'm just gonna cut it up. And you can do this if you want to leave it in pieces of this size. You can leave it in pieces of this size. If you like the taste of ginger, leave it that way. Or you can fish these out if you want. But I'm gonna chop it way smaller. This is just the beginning of the chop. Yeah, I know, there are people out there having conniption fits about the way I'm doing this, but do it however you can do it. Doesn't have to be done in a particular way. And I use a lot of ginger. I like the taste of ginger, and a lot of the times the roots we get around here don't have a really strong flavor. So, judge the amount by how much you like and how the ginger tastes. If the ginger that you get, yeah, see, this doesn't really have a strong flavor. If the ginger that you get has a very, very strong flavor, put a little less in. But this really doesn't have much of a flavor, so I'm going to put all this in. This is about 2 tablespoons. This is my interpretation of coconut beef. It's not the actual recipe. I do a lot of things that are different making this dish, which I will explain as I go along. But the original recipe doesn't call for garlic, but I like garlic, so I'm going to put some garlic in. Not putting a whole lot in, just a little bit. And these are really small cloves. But again, use fresh garlic. That has a real... that one's not good. Yeah, I can do without it unless I lose another one, and then I'll go back to the bulb and pull off more. Like I said, these are really small cloves. And right now I'm just taking the ends off of them. I'm going to scrape my cutting board. That had a lot of leftover ginger on it. Okay, now we're going to come back and smash the garlic. Yep, that one's not good too. I have to get a couple more cloves out. This was a crappy piece of garlic. If you squish them down, it makes getting the skin off of it easier. I got a trash can off to the side here where I'm throwing all of this. Yep, that one needs to be whacked again. And that one's not good. And that one's not good. This was a really bad piece of garlic. Okay, that one's not looking good. We're going to go to the other one. There were 2 in the package. I'm not going to use the whole bulb. I'm just going to use a couple cloves. But just peel the loose outer skin. And then once you can see the cloves, you can generally just pry them off. Wow, that was kind of explosive. I think that'll be enough. Unless these are just as bad as the other ones were. We'll see. Take the ends off. Yeah, that one's got a big bad spot too. Yeah, we're just going to cut the bad off. Okay, there's my garlic. And I'm just going to give this a quickie rough chop. This is all going to get mixed in with the meat, and when you brown the meat, this is all going to get cooked up. About all you'll have left of all of this at the end is going to be the taste, because the garlic and the ginger itself is going to get cooked in. And there's some garlic. And I'm just going to put it in with the ginger and throw it in at the same time. A lot of Indian dishes make a paste of garlic and ginger, so they go together pretty good. Okay, next comes onion, and I'm going to put more onion in, but I'm going to chop up what I've got left of this old one. And that's going to get... Like I said, most of this is going to get cooked down, so you don't really have to worry too much about how well it's chopped. You can use whatever kind of onion you want for this. You could use red, you could use white, you can use a yellow. I've got a yellow here. You could use the green onions, the spring onions. I've done that a few times too. And the next thing I am going to put in is 1 Roma tomato. Again, your choice whether you want to put it in or not. Your choice what kind of tomato you want to use. What size, how much. It's all up to you. I'm using this because this is what I've got. I've used cherry tomatoes. I've used regular slicing tomatoes. And you don't have to, again, don't have to cut it down tremendously small, because it is all going to get cooked. And the tomato, you really won't find much of it left at the end. And it's up to you if you want to put it in or not. Alrighty then. Okay, there's all the ingredients you need for the marinade. We have a tomato, the onion, garlic, and ginger. You're going to need salt, green seasoning. I use paprika. The original recipe doesn't call for paprika, but I like paprika, so I use paprika. Pepper. Tomato, or pepper, ketchup, and Worcestershire sauce. Alright, there you go. We got the meat, the garlic, the ginger, and the onion. I'm going to toss the tomato in. I don't really measure this, so it's kind of like whatever looks good to you. I would go, if I'm start with a tablespoon. If you want to measure, start with a tablespoon of everything, and then in your next batch you can change it up a little bit. But I give it a good sprinkle of paprika, because I like paprika. If you don't like paprika, you don't have to put it in. Go a little easy on the salt here. We'll adjust salt again, and I'm using sea salt. Or, no, this is kosher salt. I'm using kosher salt. So, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit on for right now. And then we're going to do pepper. And again, however much, if you like pepper, put a lot in. If you don't like pepper, don't put a lot in. And this time, since I don't feel like digging for my measuring spoons, I'm just going to use a standard serving size tablespoon. It's roughly about the same as a measuring tablespoon. Maybe a little bit bigger, but it really doesn't make much of a difference for this. And I'm going to put a little more in. Okay, that's the Worcestershire sauce and the tomato ketchup. Okay, so I'm putting about 2 tablespoons in this time. And once you get it all in the dish, just mix it all up. You can use your bare hands if you want. I prefer to use the gloves. You can use a spoon. However you want to mix it up, mix it up. But just make sure you get it all good mixed. That the beef gets coated with everything. Now you can marinate this, you can mix this up the night before and cook the next day. You can do this a few hours before. I wouldn't let it sit more than 24 hours. But I have let it sit as little as half an hour and it's been fine. So it's up to you and how much time you have. How much you want to let this sit. Seasoning. Okay, we got everything else in. Now it's time to add the green seasoning. And we're going to do about a heaping tablespoon of green seasoning. Plop that in and mix it all up. And then I'm going to have to transfer it back into the smaller dish so I can get it in the refrigerator. My refrigerator doesn't have that much room anymore. Okay, there's our beef all mixed and ready to go sit in the fridge for a little while.